So I was trying to find this other article that I couldn't find. An inmate at San Quentin wrote it, confirming confirming this, and it had his opinions on it. And he seemed to be cool with it. What happens when prison populations? This is a different article. What happens when prison populations are integrated after decades of being kept apart? From San Quentin Radio. So I did 3 years at San Quentin. I did 3 months in reception. Then I went somewhere else, then back to San Quentin after like a year. Did 3 years San Quentin. I got out in 2016. As of 2018, they've been doing this PC reintegration. And yes, San Quentin has fallen. Sensitive needs yard, S&Y, in order to separate out people who might need protective custody from the general prison population. These were people like police informants, former gang members, and people viewed as committing unfavorable crimes like child molestation. And of course, rapists, shit like that. But in the past several months, CDC has decided to desegregate the population so that all incarcerated people will live together. San Quentin is one prison that already has non-designated programming facilities or integrated yards. But integration is not always a smooth process. From San Quentin Radio, reporter Greg Sayers brings you a conversation between Louis Light, who has always been part of the GP population, and Michael Hildebrandt, who was formerly housed in S&Y, to hear what their experiences were like apart and what it's like to live together now. I don't know how long this is going to be. If I can even get it.
War is not over, not officially. An armistice was signed in 1953, but it was a military ceasefire, not.
So, people think that it's just going to be, every California prison's just going to become PC. That's easier said than done. Once you live there, you'll understand that everything's segregated by race. So like all the whites, all with the whites, all the blacks, all with the blacks. The Paisas, which are Hispanics, they all run together. Then you got Norteños, Sureños. You got others, which is like Islanders, Asians, things like that. And you got Native Americans. Everybody got their own section on the yard to hang out. And whenever like let's say I see a white guy fighting with a black guy, whether I like that white guy or whether I hate his fucking guts, I gotta go help him out. And that's what those race riots are all about. Basically, it's over, drug debts, or it can be over anything, disrespect. So now they're putting all these PCs on the yard. It's not going to be no different. They're going to attack those PCs. Obviously, San Quentin, they chose not to do anything and reintegrate, right? San Quentin was already on you know, a downward slope as far as like pushing politics. They were getting rid of sex offenders. What they would do is it would be two guys would jump on the sex offender, and that's remove him from the yard, basically. Roll him up, whatever terminology you want to use, but that would happen every single time they would try to come over, you know, to that they would try to be on the mainline yard. It's mandatory. They check paperwork. You gotta have your paperwork. You'll learn all this in jail. You need your full discovery. Your attorney has to give it to you. Can't be no pages missing. If you got it, if your attorney says, "Oh, well, I can't give you these pages because there's witness addresses on them," you tell him, "Hey, blacken those out with marker and shoot them to me." Legally, he has to give them to you, because they're gonna count those pages and they better be all there, because they're numbered in the corner. On top of that, they got cell phones in prison. And they're going to check Megan's Law. They're going to check the sex offender registration. So those guys are going to get found out no matter what. As far as PCs being on there, they're going to say, they're all going to attack them as a group until they're off the yard. San Quentin was a level 2. On the big yard, it's all old lifers that have stayed out of trouble for 20 years. On the go home yard, people that got less than 10 years is H unit. It's about 500 people on that yard. And, some of them are old. A lot of people want to go home. So it wasn't, even though things happen while I was there, from time to time, there was some violence, there was some stabbings. Northerner got his face sliced open. There's little incidences here and there. For the most part, it wasn't really like nothing popping off too much. They like a lot of prisons in California, I wouldn't even be able to talk to any black person unless it was business. San Quentin is not like that. Even though you can't eat after another race, you can't eat something off their tray, you can't smoke with them, you can't play no games or nothing like that. They did kind of push those politics, but they still let people talk to them for long periods of time. No one really enforced that like they do at other prisons. So, even though they were pushing some politics, there wasn't really enough people to push like a hard program. And so now I guess they just, I guess they didn't have enough people to get rid of the PCs, or else they just chose not to. They wanted to stay there and go home. I'm not too surprised that it happened, because San Quentin is not what it used to be like 10 years ago, like everyone thinks. Reception, on the other hand, yeah, that shit is on and popping. Nowadays, Badger section is the mainline reception, and Alpine is the PC reception on the backside. And in my 3 months, it was like 5 stabbings. And we don't never come out the cell, like hardly ever. It's like twice a week. And that's if you're not on lockdown. Other than like going to the chow, going to showers, that's it. From my understanding, I always heard rumors and shit, but I looked up on YouTube not that long ago about PC gangs. California PC gangs. Apparently, it's way more than I guess 2 dozen gangs over there. I'm assuming I'm assuming they're not separated by race. Like there's no white car, black car. I could be wrong, but like on the main line, that kind of prevents people from starting their own gangs and taking away, like, there's white supremacist gangs that, okay, so like all the whites are all just in one car, right? Even though they're separated by which county you're in, but it's still all like one car, right? And they're not gonna, like, let's say they're not gonna let me start my own gang and have whites come to my gang, you know what I'm saying, and take away from their protection, basically. So that's why I'm assuming that there's nothing like that in PC. S and Y got to be politically correct. Sensitive needs yard. Can't call it protective custody no more because people are sensitive. So these people are looked at as pieces of shit. They're looked at as less than human. There's a huge sense of you're in general population, we are better than they are. They're sex offenders, child molesters, snitches, dropout gang members, disgraced police. Cops have been arrested, things like that. And if you go over there, you're a piece of shit. This is like pumped in your head, and like, so everybody has pretty much the same mindset. So nobody wants to go over there, but it does happen all the time. You gotta be kidding me right now. Technical difficulties.
This is Pleasant Valley State Prison in Central California, and what's called a Sensitive Needs Yard, or SNY for short. It's supposed to be a relatively safe place to do your time, but that's all changed. This is home for Anna Ray Brown, doing 31 years for his part in a gangland killing.
I'm at the pinnacle, on top of my game.
He's also known as X-Rated, the street name he's used in the release of a dozen rap albums. In this video obtained by Fox 11 News, X-Rated, here in the black pants, is attacked by 2 knife-wielding inmates who want him dead. It sparks a small prison yard riot. He's slashed 7 times but survives. In this incident report, X-Rated tells investigators It was Northern Riders who stabbed me. Northern Riders, who use the Playboy Bunny as their symbol, are a prison-based gang composed of dropouts who left other gangs, came to an SNY yard seeking protection, and then formed a new...
So those are actually dropout Northerners. They said they left other gangs, like plural. At least that's from my understanding. They're all dropout Northerners.
gang. And the SNYs have gone to left other gangs, came to an SNY yard seeking protection, and then formed a new gang. And the SNYs have gone from a haven for safety to a den of predators, says Central California gang investigator Robert Clayton.
I've had inmates request to go back to the main line, the general population, because they were more afraid of these SNY gangs than they were of the gang they left prior. So we have guys that ask for protection all the time off of a protection yard.
In this case, these Northern Riders, all lifers, were allegedly extorting X-Rated to force him to produce a rap album of their own. Investigators say Northern Riders, who also use a falling star as their symbol, grew from 6 members to 800 in a decade, making it the fastest growing SNY gang. But Northern California investigator Mike Brody says, not the only one.
All over the state. There are dropout gangs for every ethnic group and every territorial group.
Brothers by choice, sucker-free, independent riders, cutthroat family, bad news banditos. Since the 1990s, the list has grown to more than 24 SNY gangs. Some have disappeared.
The dropout squad.
Say there are now SNY gangs at NY gangs. Some have disappeared.
He said the dropout squad is a gang. So most of these I've never heard of, but I heard of the GBGs while I was in there, the Gay Boy Gangsters. And apparently that's a thing. It's on this list right here. See that at the bottom right there? Gay Boy Gangsters.
But investigators, since the 1990s, the list has grown to more than 24 SNY gangs. Some have disappeared. But investigators say there are now SNY gangs at 22 of the state's 33 prisons. That's up from just 2 SNY yards that were first established. Are now, since the 1990s, the list has grown to more than 24 SNY gangs. Some have disappeared. But investigators say there are now SNY gangs at 22 of the state's 33 prisons. That's up from just 2 SNY yards that were first established in 1998. Gang investigator Billy Idroso worked the San Diego prison beat.
They're dangerous because what people don't realize is just because you're a dropout.
Make that 23 prisons with San Quentin now. I think it's like 34 or 35 prisons now, though. They opened up a medical facility, I think, in Stockton.
It doesn't mean that you lost that mentality. You know, you still have that gangster mentality.
And here on these SNY yards, that means taxing, extortion, theft, drug dealing, assaults, and even murder.
It's just drama. That's all they are, is drama.
This inmate, who does not want to be identified, says he's been jumped a couple of times on SNY yards.
I'll wait for you to get your drugs out and come over and just take what you have. You're going to send money to my books, and if you don't, we're going to smash you.
Ironically, these SNY, or protective custody yards, are supposed to be safer than the main line.
It was a movement.
Dagoberto Noyola, known as Dago, says he's a founding member of the 2 5s, also referred to as Dos Cincos, Cinqueros, Pesetas, the Spanish word for a quarter, or simply the numbers.
It wasn't a gang back then. It was just a way of life for us because we had to survive.
It started, he says, with less than a dozen dropouts, all at odds with the Mexican mafia, who bonded together for self-protection here in Birch Hall at the California Institution for Men in Chino. That was 20 years ago.
You must understand it's an insane world with an insane set of rules here, and they change so much.
Dongo says the two fives were tired of mafia politics.
You didn't adhere to their policies, you were an outcast.
Tired of doing hits on their own homeboys.
A gang is a gang. We're supposed to be a brother here, but it's like pretty much everybody throwing everybody under the bus.
And tired of paying the mafia a 1/3 cut on all the drugs they sold.
Nobody likes anybody else in their pocketbook.
The two fives, now the largest SNY gang with 1,500 members and associates, set up their own list of rules discouraging unwanted attention and homosexual activity, and demanding respect for each other, free of ridicule, and dedicated to wiping out the more established prison gangs.
M, AB, and LR, those are our enemies. That's who I war against.
The two fives grew along with an expanding pool of recruits as a record 30,000 inmates dropped out of their gangs during the past 12 years, all tired of traditional prison gang politics.
They're tired of getting used. You can't trust nobody. Your best friend.
I have heard rumors that some of these PC gangs over there check paperwork. And I know you're probably thinking, like, what? Aren't they all like snitches and sex offenders and stuff? And the honest answer is I don't know. But from what I've heard, being in the hole and hearing conversations, that some of these groups check paperwork, and that they don't allow no sex offenses like the Northern Riders. I know, okay, so the Northerners in prison, they run the strictest program. They remove a lot of their own people for minor offenses. And, they go over to PC, and I guess their paperwork is still good. They become Northern Riders. Like I said, I don't know if this is true or not, so don't just take my word for it. If anyone has been to PC and knows firsthand, please comment on it. Because I would like to know if it's true or not. Now, for anyone that doesn't know what a juggalo is, it's a fan of Insane Clown Posse, is a rap group from Detroit. I got these all over me, right? In mainline, there is no juggalo. Like, I've met white juggalos, I've met black juggalos in there, all different races, right? There's no group though. Like, I went in as white, right? Whenever there was funk on the yard, I was out on the yard with the whites. That's just how it is. There's no like, I've heard of people going in as other, but I haven't really seen that. I've never really seen like whites go in as other. I have heard a rumor though that there's a juggalo gang in PC over there. Again, I don't know if this is true or not. I did not see it on that list I just played. And I've also heard a rumor that they check paperwork as well. I've heard rumor that they're allies with Northern Riders. I don't know if any of this is true. I don't even know if there is even a group over there that goes under that banner. Is there anyone that's been to PC watching this video? We would like to know: is there a Juggalo car in California prison system in PC in protective custody? We're curious. And if so, do you know whether they check paperwork or not? Because I know there's, I know Insane Clown Posse has anti-pedophile songs about, there's one called To Catch a Predator. There's another song called Six Pedophiles, and it's all about killing pedophiles. And from everyone I've spoken to, juggalos do not like sex offenders at all. And I will not comment any further on that.
I'll be the first one to stab you in the back.
Investigators say SNY gangs are more appealing with a structure and leadership that is loose. They're interracial. Members are allowed to flip in and flip out. But prison investigators warn the game is still the same.
Making money and controlling the yards.
That's led to an unprecedented number of riots and injuries on the supposedly safer SNY yards.
I think it all boils down to is you can't take that gangster out of that gangster lifestyle.
And investigators agree, here on the SNY yards at California prisons, there's a whole new evolution of gangs. What is even more frightening, say those who are following this phenomena closely, is that the influence and violence of the SNY gangs is already bleeding out into the streets. We'll have more on that story next Sunday. Chris Blatchford.
Those supposed dropouts have formed a new brand of gang. In part 2 of his report on SNY gangs, Chris Blatchford says they're now moving their criminal influence from the prisons to the streets.
Go in the same car, pick up a bag, and bam.
Investigators say 5 members of the Northern Riders gang gathering in this Central Coast motel room are planning a robbery.
They'll have a bank within distance where the store's at, so they don't have to drive too far.
In this undercover video obtained by Fox 11 News, you only see Joey Cloud, known as Smokey. He has the word Rider tattooed in big letters across his neck, and the gang's symbol, a Playboy Bunny logo, inked on his scalp. Gang investigator Mike Brody says Northern Riders meet every month in sessions called networking or council.
Everybody gets together. This is what I do. I know how to do robberies. I know how to steal cars. I got a connection for drug trade.
Investigators say Northern Riders were formed a decade ago behind prison walls. And it's the fastest growing group of a new hybrid of prison-based gangs composed of dropouts who left other gangs and went into protective custody on so-called sensitive needs yards, or SNY for short. Then, those dropouts formed new SNY gangs.
That's all they know is gang lifestyle.
Prison gang investigator Robert Clayton.
And we thought, well, we could just change that by opening up this yard and giving them opportunity to start over. But you could take the gangster out of the gang, but you're never going to take that gangster out of him.
Agents have identified as many as 24 of these new SNY gangs. All are recruiting from an expanding pool of 30,000 gang dropouts. That's 10 times more than a decade ago. Prison sources say gangsters are now dropping out at the unprecedented rate of 2,400 a year. Francisco Hernandez, also known as Frank Nitti, belongs to what is estimated to be the largest SNY gang, the 2-5s, also known as Dos Cincos, DC, or the numbers.
We got betrayed, disrespected, everything.
Nitti, who says he did a number of hits for the Mexican mafia before they stabbed him 16 times, explains he and other dropouts became Disillusioned with the heavy-handed rule of traditional prison gangs, Mexican Mafia, Nuestra Familia, Aryan Brotherhood, Nazi lowriders, and Black Guerrilla Family. Now, he's committed to 2-5 revenge.
Mexican Mafia.
So 23 prisons have PC in them. There's only 34 prisons, 35, so maybe about a dozen prisons that don't have PCs. But that doesn't mean the whole prison is PC. Like, they got different level yards. So level 1 would be like, would translate in another state probably to like low custody, level 2 medium custody, level 3 high custody, and level 4, I guess, super max, you guys call it. We don't use none of those terms. We just use level 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so you might have like a prison that's got a level 3 would be protective custody, but the level 1 and 2 would be general population, or vice versa, you know. So not every one of those prisons is going to be protective custody. The only thing I know is with everything that they're doing over there, you know, because if you stay on that yard and those PCs come over to your yard and you let them stay there, everyone lets them stay there, guess what? Now you are protective custody. You're part of that now. And you're going to be looked at. You go somewhere else and people find out where you've been, you're going to get removed. Hell, they probably won't even let you into another GP if you, like, let's say you were at San Quentin and the protective custodies came over when you were there and you stayed on that yard. The police probably won't even put you in another general population prison since you stayed on that yard. You got 3 days to get off of any bad yard or you're no good, basically. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, how many riots we see on the news, and if general population is even a thing in a few years. West Coast, I'm out.